Hello, everybody. How are things going? By the time you see this, hopefully the Radiohead Worst to Best and the Opiate reaction will both be up. If they are, thank you in advance for watching them. Both really fun experiences to film. And yeah, hopefully that'll be more indicative of the direction going forward on this channel, especially with the Radiohead Worst to Best, because I'll definitely be doing these react videos, and we're doing a react video today. But I'm also going to diversify into hopefully some worst to best, hopefully some different features, maybe top 10 lists, that sort of thing. So let me know in the comments again any ideas you have for videos or any features you want to see. I will do a video on pretty much anything if there's a want for it there. So hit me up in the comments for that. But right now we are going back to the bread and butter of this channel, although it's not Tool, but close enough. We are going back to react videos, and I'm reacting to an album that I have not heard a note of, but that was recommended for me very strongly by one of my good friends. He was like, you need to listen to this, you need to listen to this. It's a Sweet Trip album. It's called Velocity Design Comfort. So with this album, I actually got recommended this one a long time ago, because someone said it was similar to Kid A, the Radiohead album. And it was in the back of my head, and I was like, oh, I should do that one time, but I just never got around to it. And then fast forward to now, when my good friend recommended me really strongly this album, and I was like, okay, I've been recommended it twice, so I might as well listen to it. And I thought I'd do it on this channel. This is completely untethered from any ongoing series I'm doing, so this isn't obviously a random album generator video, or just a random album. And it's obviously not a Tool album. So this is just completely untethered from any series. I just thought I'd love to react to this based on the recommendation of a friend. It's quite a famous album, apparently. I actually haven't heard a note of it again, but, you know, lots of people have said it's a fantastic album. It has tons of critical acclaim, so I looked up. Apparently it's like a glitch pop album or something, or it's at least really electronic. So that's right at my ballpark, right at my wheelhouse. I'm a huge electronic fan. I love electronic pop, glitch pop, everything. So hopefully I'm going to love this album. And I've had a really good track record generally with the albums I've reacted to on here. I've loved like 80% of them. So let's see if this album joins that elusive club. You're all sick of the preamble. I'm done with the preamble. I have the album up here. First impressions are very electronic music-esque track titles, with the sort of omission of vowels and stuff like that. That's a classic Tekka Aphex Twin, Boards of Canada sort of thing. So yeah, you can immediately identify it as an electronic album just based on that. Pretty long album, I think. It looks like it's maybe a bit less than 80 minutes, but we have a very long track in the middle by the looks of it, 10 minutes plus, and then a lot of them are sort of in the 5 to 8 minute range, so that'd be interesting. Electronic music lends itself really well to longer track lengths without necessarily having to change stuff up that much within the track, which I like. Again, I'm a sucker for repetition. So hopefully there's a lot of that. Fingers crossed it's repetition of good elements. And yeah, I have nothing more to say. I don't really have much preamble to deliver on this album anyway, because I haven't heard a note of it. I don't know what this is going to sound like. No prior experience with Sweet Trip, who I think I've heard of releasing like an album this year or something. So it's a timely reaction for me. But yeah, let's just get into it. Track 1 is called Tekka. It's 3 minutes and 9 seconds long, so we got a short little way to start off the album. I might be adjusting the volume a little bit because I have it set to the Tool level of like 95 on this, but this could be a lot louder. So without further ado, track 1, Tekka. This is Velocity Design Comfort by Sweet Trip. Let's go. Whoa, yeah, okay, yeah, maybe chill out. Oh jeez, this is very glitchy. Jeez, evasive. Didn't expect this. That's like vape beat or something. Yeah. much more basic than I thought. Yeah, for some reason I had in my head this is going to be more organic sounding. Probably just from like the album cover, which looks really sweet and inviting and welcoming. I thought it'd be closer to like a Fortet or Boards of Canada than a Venetian Snares on Aphex Twins. So, subverting my expectations, which I'm not against, honestly. Really artificial sounding, really mechanical, giving me not much to latch onto so far, but let's see if that changes. I want to turn this up, but it's like the treble is just painful. Got a little melody in the right channel instead. Okay. Not what I expected, but... The reports of pop were greatly exaggerated. Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot to latch onto there from like a melody or a harmonic or even a particular rhythmic perspective. That was like pure abrasive pummeling, hardcore like techno glitch stuff in the vein of, again, like Venetian Snares, which I listened to the other day, but without any semblance of like an organic drum sample used. That was just pure computer music, like Idiotech by Radiohead, but like thrown into a blender and then just thrown in your face. Yeah, I don't know whether I liked that or not. I would say it was like cathartic, but then again, I think the trebles were too high and like the sort of cymbal, for lack of a better word, sounds were too abrasive, I think, to be fully cathartic. Like, that was piercing. That percussion stuff that went through the whole thing was so piercing and just pummeling and like needles going into your ears. Towards the end, I liked the little ambient parts, but even that was disrupted by like the glitchiness of it, just tearing it all apart right at the end there. Weird way to start off an album. I don't know if the album is going to continue in this mold. I've heard a lot of things that say this album's like on the mellower side, on a slightly chiller side. That was not mellow or chill, like in the slightest. So, I don't know if this is a harbinger of things to come, or if this is like an opener that subverts your expectations for the rest of the album. And like, there are plenty of examples of openers of famous albums that sound nothing like the rest of the album, like, you know, Velvet Underground Nico. Yeah, that's all I can think of off the top of my head, but yeah, rest assured there are tons of examples of that. It's very well produced. Like, for what it's trying to do, for that pure glitchiness, like, that's pure, extremely well produced glitch, making no concessions to harmony or melody in any significant degree. And to that end, again, it was produced in such a punchy and forward, in-your-face way. Again, emphasizing the sort of trebly aspects of the mix rather than the bass. There wasn't as much bass in that track at all. for a band that obviously isn't this big budget major label band, I respected that the production was so full and dense and rich. And I imagine on like re-listens you can start to pull that apart and like pick out the individual elements that make up that track. On first listen though, it's harder to do that. That was wow, pretty confounding. That was very in your face and just aggressive. I actually don't know where those 3 minutes went. It sort of like disappeared from my brain. Track 2 is called Dsco. It's also 3 minutes 11 long, very similar track length. Are we going to get into the mellower sides of the album? Are we going to get into the heavy sides of the album like Tekka? I don't know, we'll see. Let's go with track 2. Ooh. Whoa! Okay, vocals. This is like stereo lab or something. Oh! Oh, this is nice. I like this. Yeah, those sounds like a male and a female vocalist there, like harmonizing, and that reminds me really of like a Stereo Lab or something. And a very similar production to a Stereo Lab and arrangement. So much different than the first track, like that, completely night and day. Not necessarily in sort of how organic it sounds, i.e. not at all, but in terms of like pop sensibility, like this is much closer to a pop song than track 1, and even more poppy than I expected. Huh. synth melody is gorgeous. Oh yeah. Okay. Oh my god, that was actually incredible. Like, that was really just joyous and like life-affirming songwriting. God damn. Oh my god, there was just so much to love about that track. The interlocking male-female stereo lavish vocals, the like waves of I think guitar, like heavily distorted electric guitar, mangled beyond recognition, but playing some almost shoegaze like motifs and chords running throughout the whole thing, to those like festival sort of style synths with the like heavy buzz filter on them, to the, you know, like that synth line at the end that just played that lovely clean little melody that had echoes of the vocals but didn't quite get into that territory. Just every element in that worked together so well, and even though it was dense to the point where it became like difficult again to pick out any individual element, and still had this delightful sort of pep and pop sensibility to it that is, again, more in line with what I expected from this album, but I'd say going even further, as I said during the track, towards the pop direction than it was to the, you know, electronic noise direction, which makes it completely different to the first track. Like, completely separate. And I love albums that, like, do completely different things on each track. They don't have to do that to be a favourite album. I mean, look at, you know, Tool's early stuff with me, for example. But, like, I think that variety just works so well. That was like honey getting poured over your ears after your ears got, you know, like, deathed by 1,000 cuts with that first track. That was really pretty, really gorgeous, fantastic. So many good things to say. Yeah, fantastic. The way that was produced, the way that was arranged, the melody in that, I love the vocal melody, and again, for the millionth time, shout out to those two vocalists. Their voices, even though they were very back in the mix, which privileged the synths and the drums more, that sort of honey-like melody and interlocking of the two harmonies and the voices was just fantastic. Really, really fantastic. And I didn't talk about the drums, and the drums kept it super simple, which again strikes an amazing contrast to the first track. Super simple, not at all one of the more abrasive elements of the track. And I don't think it needed a more abrasive element. Again, this is sort of like honeyed pop music, almost in the vein of like a Jesus and Mary chain, but gone all like fucked up and distorted and completely electronic. I might have to change my setup for the future in terms of filming this, because with tracks like that I just want to like get up and dance, and I couldn't help myself at one point. As you can see, I got the cowbell. But yeah, tracks like that are just so fit to dancing, and like that could be a good running track or something. I could totally see myself listening to that at the gym or something. God, I'm gonna have to re-listen to that the moment this album's over. That was gorgeous, fantastic, gorgeous, brilliant. But the third track is Velocity. It's long. It's 8 minutes 35 long. So I assume we're going to stray a bit more away from the pop mold, go into weirder, glitchier stuff again. Which, I mean, isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I don't know, they do that pop really well. I honestly hope we get more whiffs of track 2 than we do track 1. Yeah, let's just do it. Let's see how this goes. This is track 3, Velocity. Technically one of the title tracks, because the title is Velocity Design Comfort, so a third of the title track of this album, you could say. Track 3, let's go. Yeah, glitch again. Yeah. Just an aside, I've like no conception of how people can do that with computers. Like, I make some music myself, but never in the vein of something like that. And I just like can't imagine just sitting down in front of a computer and saying, yes, I'm gonna make that, and then being able to make that like without any semblance of an organic or what's the word, acoustic sound to draw from. So mad respect to anyone that can do that, frankly. Ooh, bassy. Ooh. Oh. I thought that was a beat being dropped there for a second. Yeah, more of that. Yeah, done in a more pleasant way than the first track was, though, that's for sure. Give me a sec, so... Whoever said this was like Kid A lied to me. Liar. I like that sample in the background. It's like very Boards of Canada-verse. Just light, sort of, again, like Antarctic synth pads. Yeah, I like how it's more pared back in this section. It needs it, I think. Yeah, the vocal melodies are great on top. so this is not a very interesting reaction. Sorry about my lack of commentary. It's more of a groovy sort of, I said the word meditative too much, but it's meditative. Add a little bit of guitar that's introduced. I like the voices. I want them to come back. Oh, there goes the song. Okay, so that was what was the name of the track? It was Velocity, right? Yeah, that was interesting. I guess to like summarize my thoughts on that a bit, I liked it, but all the same, I feel like somewhere in that 8 minutes of glitch and electronic rumblings and noise, I feel like there was a sweet 3-minute long pop song that was hiding in there that I want to go in like an archaeologist and sort of like pull away the layers of noise and musical detritus and lift it out. About 4 minutes in, when it went into that, when the voice came in really, and it went into that sort of quieter section, which is more mellow. That vocal melody was just fantastic, like fantastic. I loved that sort of stepwise ascending, descending movement that it did. Her voice, whoever the female vocalist is, her voice is just spot on. Fantastic, adds a lovely sort of airy, breathy quality to this otherwise pretty dense music. And that was fantastic. And I this is probably complete sacrilege, but because I'm normally a big, supporter of electronic and electronic music. Like, obviously I love that Venetian Snares album, which was, like the whole idea of it was a bunch of notes coming at you at once. But here I just wanted to pull away all the electronic music and like isolate that melody and give it a more conventional sort of pop backdrop, which is what I think they did on Dsco. Like, I can imagine on track 2 they could have made that into like an 8-minute long thing like they did this, but they chose not to, and they kept it extremely to the point and extremely straightforward. I think it was better for that. Maybe if this track didn't have that bit, I would have thought of it a bit differently. Maybe I would have said it functioned fine on its own as like a track of sort of pretty pseudo-ambient like moods and grooves, but I don't know, the presence of something so great in there, I wanted that to be like made into its own track and maybe put, with some nice acoustic guitars and like a cool drum pattern or something. I don't know. Yeah, that's probably complete sacrilege, and I can hear the dislikes from here. They just hear me out and like keep in mind that I'm coming to this from a perspective of someone who's completely new to not only Sweet Trip but this entire album. As for the actual track, like I keep talking about what I wish the track was, the actual track was fine. I liked how there's sort of an electric guitar at the end to cut through the more glitchy, sporadic electronic elements of it. What did I like? I liked the bass line, very subtle, very, very subtle, but it was there in the left channel. remind me again of like Autek is what keeps appearing to me. Remind me of you know, like some of Autek's early stuff around, you know, Amber, Base Cadet, that sort of thing. I thought the glitchy stuff worked fine. I mean, it wasn't as abrasive and in your face as the first track was, which I consider a positive thing. I liked how it was sort of kept quite subtle in the mix. I do think there was maybe a bit too much of it. Maybe something a bit sparser probably could have worked, because it straddled this fine line between, you know, like dancier and heavier, like the first track was, and more moody and groovy, which is sort of, I think, what they were shooting for more. But they're very busy. Their arrangements are very busy in terms of electronic stuff happening in the mix. So I don't know, maybe committing to a slightly mellow arrangement would have worked. It wasn't too overpowering though, certainly not as overpowering as the first track, which I consider a blessing, thank God. So yeah, I also liked those synth pads in the background. Sounds like it could be sampled from something. I like how it was sort of receded and kept in this like this envelope of like almost like a vinyl crackle or something. Whatever it was, it sounded very distant, which was cool. Very Boards of Canada-esque. I hear all of the influences, obviously, of this album all over this album. So I liked how those elements came together. But man, wouldn't it have been cool if that was just a 3-minute pop song? God damn. If only. This sounds like it could be one of those albums so far that will like get 50 times better on each listen. I have a feeling this is one that's ripe to be unpacked on further listens, because I don't think I'm catching everything on this listen. Track 4 is called, this is very conventional, it's called Fruitcake and Cookies. It's almost 8 minutes long, so just under 8 minutes long. It's a similar length to Velocity. I'm assuming it'll do a similar thing to Velocity. I don't know, I keep looking out for like a 3-minute long track, because maybe it'll be Dsco Part 2. That's probably like someone saying to a Radiohead fan that Creep is the only song they like, because I imagine a song as poppy as that is like their Creep. But nevertheless, we'll see. Track 4 is Fruitcake and Cookies, and it sounds like this. Whoa! They're good at that. Whatever that is, they're good at that. Just whether or not I like appreciate it. Slight pulse on it. This whole album's like predicated on that dichotomy between glitchy, abrasive stuff and really sweet sounding lullaby-esque stuff, I think. Sounds like a muted like acoustic guitar or something, like played at the head. Someone was playing bum notes on that electric. This is weird. This is a weird track so far. That's probably the first obvious appearance of an acoustic instrument on a track, that acoustic guitar. Too much glitch, man. Just chill. Too much glitch. I'm sorry. Again, that's probably sacrilege, but... This is exactly the same. I feel like I want to take away all those layers of glitch and just like stick to that. Sounds like a glockenspiel melody in the background and the voice. That's quite pretty. There's some like joy to be found in that juxtaposition, but I'm just having trouble finding it.
persuasive. Chill.
Yeah. Okay, so that was Peach and Cookies. It's so tempting to play the comparison game with this album, and I know it's probably reductive to do that, but it's so tempting to play the comparison game because, like, I don't think I've heard a band do exactly what this band does ever. This exact formula anyway, but I've heard like many bands do the individual parts of it. Like this, in my mind, is like equal parts Tekka, Boards of Canada, My Bloody Valentine, and Stereolab, which is just such a weird combination, but it is that. With like little hints of, I don't know, a Fortet or a Jesus and Mary chain in there, which again are completely different, but it in that way it's completely original, I think, but it's also like not entirely, because I mean that last 4 minutes, for example, where it just shifted into a total like shoegaze song, that was just pure My Bloody Valentine, and I'm surprised those comparisons hadn't occurred to me before this point, because the male female vocals interlocking, that's pure My Bloody Valentine, straight out of their playbook. And with the shoegaze stuff that is happening on this track, also a bit on Dsco, I'm surprised it didn't occur to me earlier. So that was just like, that could have been released on an early My Bloody Valentine album, and I would not have been surprised. The second half, at least. The first half was more, conventional, glitchy stuff with sort of the Tekka thing going on. And then once again in the first half, I mean, I don't think this. I always talk about the song that's hiding underneath the noise, and that sounds like I'm some old fart saying that, which I feel like right now, honestly. But I think what occurs, in my opinion, I think the most original part of Sweet Trip, is that song that's hiding underneath. It was hiding underneath Velocity. It was very much hiding underneath the first half of this track. I mean, you had sort of a nice, again, like glockenspiel thing with the female vocals just doing something lovely. I feel like that's really original. That's really original and concise and succinct and creative in a new way. But I feel like almost they're too enamored with their influences to, to keep it simple, in my opinion. I think they're too obsessed with doing the glitchy thing, when, in my opinion, and there's going to be millions of people worldwide that disagree with me, in my opinion, I think if they stripped away all of that electronic stuff, they'd have a gorgeous album. A really gorgeous album. As it stands, you have this album that's doing... I feel like I'm not talking about the track enough. I feel like I'm reviewing the album 4 tracks in, which I kind of am. Hopefully my opinion will change later. But I feel like what we have are these like great songs buried underneath this electronic distortion. I think they're a bit self-indulgent, in my opinion, and that's a bad word in music. But I think they're being a bit self-indulgent by layering it with all of that other extraneous stuff, because I honestly don't think it adds to the music that much. It's interesting though, because I'm not going to keep like going on this rant that I'm going on right now, because we still have got like 7 or 8 tracks left. But it's interesting because an album like this sort of brings up questions for me, like is the actual song, the melody and the harmony at the base of it, which is a very Eurocentric, Western-centric idea, or is the music like everything combined? So all of that glitchy stuff, which can't be notated in a traditional Western sense, and those heavy guitars in the second half, and like all of the textures and timbres all coming together. Is that the song? Or is it like the raw harmony and melody underneath? I think listening to this is making me realise how conditioned I am to believe that it's the former. Oh, it's actually the latter. Yeah, the raw melody and harmony underneath. Interesting. Really interesting band. Okay, I promise you, you haven't wandered into a shitty university lecture or some shitty YouTube think piece. You've wandered into a React video, and we're here to react, so I'm going to react to the next track. This is track 5, just called Sept. Another long track, God, 8 minutes 26 long, so let's see if it does a similar thing. No more preamble, ba-bam. Oh, Jesus. There's more of a pulse to it. Ooh, there's a good bass line buried way back in the mix. That's the problem. Why do they try and hide that stuff? They're good at it. Oh, no beat drop? Alright. Okay, then. That's like a voice just mangled.
Stolen.
Oh, that's like a djembe or something. Oh, gorgeous melody, my God. This is the percussion session, though. I love that bass line. Yeah, I like this more. I mean, it's still glitchy, but like they're cutting back on it a bit. Give me a sec. Yeah. Ah. tabla now or something. Huh? Harpsichord. I won't get a tambourine out again, I promise. Very acoustic as well. Okay, yeah, that was, what was it called again? Something, Sept. Yeah, that was frustrating because that was, like, so much closer to what I sort of wanted from this album. It's like they read my mind. Apart from a little bit at the beginning, tiny bit in the second half, they did away with the majority of the glitchiness there. And they pretty much gave, like, a straight shoegaze song. Like, for the vast majority, probably over 3/4 of it. So that was really good. I liked how acoustic and organic that instrumentation was for the most part. I mean, you had, you know, like a lot of electric guitar stuff, of course, layered behind like pedals on pedals on pedals. But it was there. I loved those percussion loops quite a bit. I mean, the djembe in the first half. By the way, I promise this has become Sam's percussion show-off session, but I'll cut back on the percussion in the future, I'll promise, but no guarantees. So yeah, I loved that. I think that added a nice sort of raw, organic touch to the song, even more so than a lot of the other elements. That was great. And then, of course, that tabla, that pretty clean tabla sound towards the end was also fantastic. Yeah, it's little earthy touches like that, I think, that really add sort of the kick to the album, the punch that it needs. It's a shame, though, because I wish that production was used on either the last track or the track before, because I thought the melody on this was good, but I don't think it was as good as those last two tracks. I mean, that sort of production on like a Velocity, say, would have been fantastic, like to let the song breathe a bit more. So yeah, I didn't like that melody. I liked the melody. You saw my reaction during the actual thing. I liked the melody, didn't like it quite as much as the previous tracks though. A very long song. It didn't feel too long though, like it didn't feel bloated or anything. I think this is more sort of in the mold of like these long songs in the mold of, you know, 3 tracks stuffed into one, rather than one song just like elongated beyond measure. And sometimes the latter can work, sometimes the former can work. I think the former mostly works here. So the length isn't too much of an issue to me. But it looks like in the like coming tracks, apart from one, they're all like shorter, on the shorter side, so that's good. This is a very sweet album, like in sound. It's like a sweet, cloying album hidden under a noisy, aggressive techno album. So that, yeah, again, as I said, that's the contrast that this whole album is predicated on. But underneath, between those, light, angelic female vocals and those hints of acoustic instruments, glockenspiels, light shoegaze stuff, that sort of thing, it's like I read this review of a Jesus and Mary Chain album once that was like a razor blade hidden in a candy apple. And I think that's a pretty good summary for this, but I think it's reversed. I think for this album, it's more like a razor blade, but once you bite into it, it's actually made of like fairy floss. So that's the best metaphor I can give for an album like this. It's really harsh and abrasive on the surface, but really sweet and cloying underneath. So I think that's really interesting. Track 6 is called Pro::Love::Add. More sort of classic or Tekka style electronic track titles. It's on the shorter side, this one, so this is 5:46. Let's hear it. Hopefully it'll be a Dsco. We'll see. I'm campaigning for them to make Dsco Part 2. Which, for most other albums, I wouldn't ask for, but for this one I do. Ooh! Whoa! Very glitchy. There's no doubt the glitchiness is like well produced. I don't think that's any question. It's excellent. Ooh! There's an electric guitar. It's like breakbeat. It's the Venetian Stairs track. Don't like that melody though. That's pretty. Not like groundbreaking or anything, but pretty. Yeah, not crazy about that melody or those chords. A bit too plain for me. Back to a breakbeat. Sounds like it. Okay. Yeah, some crazy editing stuff going on here. Ah. Ba, 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 ba. I wish I was more crazy about that melody. Like acoustic drums in the back. Yeah, okay, so that was, what was it called? Pro-Love-Am or something? Pro-Love-Ad. Yeah, no, that was sort of, that went more into, like, the first track's territory, albeit with a lot less of that sort of harshness. Went into a more sort of a breakbeat thing. That was pretty much breakbeat for the whole thing. Normally I'm used to, because I listen to Venetian snares so much now, normally I'm used to, hearing breakbeats in 7/4, but here it's all 4/4, so that's fine. A very, again, sort of a tinny breakbeat, like a very, very treble heavy breakbeat. Almost no lower end really used in that entire track. So a lot of the, solid pulse and grounding is admittedly lost a bit to that treble heavy sound. But, that's not a big deal. I don't know, you had that sort of middle 8 section where it went into like some electric guitar chords and stuff. I wasn't too crazy about those chords used. They were fine, but like nothing particularly catchy or special. To me, they just felt a bit empty. Same with that melody, the "Free to my lover" thing. Not one of the better melodies I think they have on this album so far. I've probably liked pretty much every single melody before this more than that. I mean, it's telling that I can still remember how Dsco goes, like with the that thing. I can still tell after only one listen, and I can still remember it so clearly. But with that track, I don't think I'll be able to remember that too long rather after the track's over. So yeah, it wasn't huge on that melody for carrying the track. In that case, it's probably a decent thing that they decide to have something on top of it to make it more energetic. And like give the track more of a pulse and a sense of direction, even though that pulse could be stronger. So yeah, nothing too much else to say about that one. Yeah, I mean, standard fare sort of breakbeat stuff with some lighter edges to it. It was fine. I see the benefits of having that breakbeat. I also see the benefits of leaving out the breakbeat and just having acoustic stuff. Oh well. I can't create an album that's already been created, so I'm not going to go on about that too much. 7th track is called Design Number 1. So this is like sort of another title track, technically. Short, 3 minutes 30. So are we going to get another Dsco, or are we going to get another Tekka, or are we going to get something completely different? Let's see. Track 7. Design 1. This whole album feels very designed. I think that's an apt metaphor. It feels like it's put together rather than recorded in a traditional sense. Yep. Okay, you can use a computer. Let's move on. Come on. Ooh! Ooh, yes, that's the backbeat I need. Ah! Yeah, okay. Yeah, I needed that. I needed this. Yeah, I like how backbeats establish here. So I haven't been pausing in the track, so I've just sort of given up on that. I can deliver commentary as I go. Yes, this is more like it. All that stuff, but oh, okay, I didn't notice that bass line, but that's kind of cool. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun. I'm gonna rub it down here. That failed. Oh yeah, okay, I liked that. And as of today, henceforth, I shall be resigning my music critic passes altogether, because that track did everything that I didn't want the album to do, and I still loved it. Because the funny thing is that was more like a Tekka than it was a Dsco. In that there was no sort of acoustic or pretty element to that at all. It was just the electronic stuff. There was no song underneath that. As such, there has been in some other tracks. Well, I use the word song in inverted commas, and you don't want me to get started on the whole Western ideas of melody and harmony speech that I went on before. But no, there was no conventional, acoustic chord-based song under that, which I've sort of liked that element of in past tracks. That was just a backbeat, some glitchy stuff, and two chords for pretty much a whole track. And yet that was still fantastic. That was still really fantastic. That would sound awful on an acoustic album, ironically. I loved how, comparatively, there was still sort of glitchy distortion happening over the top, which, again, I don't think it particularly needed. So I guess in that sense, it could still be stripped back. I think underneath was an even simpler track than what was displayed to me. But, I loved how it was comparatively simple, punchy, straight to the point, compared to the rest of the album, which sort of, hints at rhythms more obliquely, indirectly. And I love how those simple, synth chords just played out over the top in a sort of really funky, like almost house-like manner. Yeah, that was fantastic. Really fantastic. Probably my favorite, unreservedly my favorite track, in fact, since Dsco. And maybe if some of the other tracks were like kept down a bit in terms of arrangement, like made a bit sparser, then some of the others would be my favorites. But as it stands, Dsco and this kept it really simple, and for that reason, I think they're my favorites so far. Yeah, no, that was just really pleasant and fun. That was my stupid tambourine. You didn't want the return of this after the tour video, I'm sure. No, that was just simple, sparse, again, by the album standards, and a pleasure to listen to, a real joy to listen to. Didn't do anything too complex, didn't try and show off how good they were as producers necessarily, just like a nice beat, a nice groove, and some of my favourite electronic music is just that, a nice beat and groove, so not much else to say other than that was fantastic. Yeah, that added a bit of an adrenaline shot, which I think I needed for a long album. And I'm going to need for this next track, which is over 10 minutes long by the looks of it. Eep. It's called International. Yeah, that could be too long. I don't want to judge a song before I've heard it, but I mean, the 8 minutes 30 of like a velocity was fine, but like 10-minute plus, I don't know if that same thing I said about how the length isn't too overbearing will stand. But let's see. Track 8, International. How long is it? 10 minutes 23, okay, so not too long. I can't imagine how much time is spent on these electronic noodlings. It's really densely produced. Oh, I hear a voice. Is this going to be like an ambient thing? We don't have a song yet. That's a male vocalist. That's like a Flaming Lips song or something circa like Yoshimi. With that acoustic guitar in the background and that sort of quite delicate male vocalist. That's interesting. I'm interested to see where this track goes. Reminds me of Do You Realise a bit, that bit. I do like this so far. Again, because he's keeping the beat, or whoever the beat maker is keeping the beat against him. Like the end of that melodic phase. The first half isn't as amazing, but the da-da-da is cool. I'm sorry. It's not as like it doesn't keep you as on edge as like say a Tool or something. But hey, at least you can say this is my genuine reaction. Like it'd be disingenuous if I just talked all over this. Oh, I almost got that line. Hmm. It's just totally organic now. Sleepy. The song, rather. And it makes me sleepy, even though I'm not. Ending with the standard burst of just random electronic noise. No, for a 10-minute long track of, glitchy stuff, that was actually surprisingly inoffensive. That was mellow, that was chill, that was very cruisy. I liked it quite a bit. Not like one of the most outstanding tracks on this, but probably top 5 so far, definitely. So we have multiple different sections in that. We have that first sort of 5 minutes, which rides along on this, again, fairly sparse, but still pretty, glitch-inspired, very Boards of Canada-esque beat, which was done instead of a nice halftime cruisy feel. That was a nice section. The melody at its core was pretty good. I'm not a huge fan of the movement in the first half of the melody, but just that little hook at the end, the da-da-da-da thing, forgive my singing, is pretty great. That was a really nice little moment. And I like the repetition of it. I like how they don't try and change up the actual melody underneath every 4 bars, which is what a lot of other musicians are wont to do. So, no, that was cool. I liked that part of it. Then in the second half, it got much more mellow, and I think that was probably actually my favourite part of it, when it just disappeared into those sort of mellow, cruisy chimes and light keyboard work, and just like waves and waves of individual notes like coming out of the ether and just coming into the room with me. Sends you sort of into a nice sort of trance-like state, which I thought was quite pretty, quite gorgeous. And then those last 2 minutes, which was almost completely acoustic. Like you had the acoustic guitar strumming and some nice, pretty 3/4 stuff. Which, by the way, I just realised the track was in 3/4. So it's an interesting thing to note. I think every track so far pretty much has been, well, the ones that are in like a time, which I think is actually all of them. It's actually all of them. Have all been in 4/4, I think. Don't quote me on that. So that's a little interesting thing to point out. A 3/4 is by definition a much more sort of lulling feel, which I'm guessing was a very deliberate choice, and that melded and meshed with the production quite well, which is on the whole a lot more mellow and and lulling and calm and lullaby-esque than a lot of the other earlier tracks. I mean, certainly a lot more than the Drake Creek track, which is just 2 tracks before. So, no, that was cool. Those last 2 tracks, Design 1 and International, they're a really cool breather from the rest of the album, coming off, like a Pro Love ad and stuff like that. Very well put, very well produced, rather, well arranged. Probably those last 2 have been the 2 best tracks in my opinion since Dsco, or at least the way they've been arranged is the best arrangement since Dsco. I think like certainly a Velocity or something is a very gorgeous song underneath. But that's the problem, it's underneath all that crazy electronic stuff. Alright, so track 9 is called Dedicated. It's 5 minutes 51 long. Ran downstairs, got some food, fixed up the camera. Ready for the last 4 tracks. I'm ready and energized, so come on Sweet Trip, let's hit me. Track 9, Dedicated. Don't know what to expect. Always wishing for another Dsco though, of course. Let's go. Ooh. That sounds like a voice. That sounds like me. Even the kick drums on this album are like very mids heavy. No bass at all. Are they English? I can even English accent on this show. Much simpler this time. Like power electronics, it's another classic example though of like a track that's you'd find earlier in the album, in particular with this sort of sweet sounding song underneath this just mess of electronics, and I think it works a tiny bit better here than it did earlier in the album, but it's still something to point out. Tekka levels of mess in the electronics. Space Invaders or something. Nah. I have an orange left. No other music reaction channel, can I just say, does this. You'll never find on any other channel anyone eating an orange to Sweet Trip. You only get that on SMAM listens. Good orange too, not too tart, not too sweet. Perfect taste. Some oranges are the best. On chopping up beats and everything. Yeah, no, that was fine. That wasn't too bad. It's just occurring to me while I like listen to the sort of breakbeat style stuff, because that was ostensibly a more, you know, rhythm driven track than a lot of the other ones. Excuse me, choking on some orange. Like, it occurred to me that I sort of praised that Venetian Snares album for a lot of the reasons that I like am a detractor of this album, which I just noticed, because every time Venetian Snares got like super busy and aggressive and like a million sort of sounds in your face at once, every time he did that was like the best fucking moment of my life. And then every time they do it on this, I'm like, I don't want them to do it as much, which is weird. I'm just trying to think why that is. I mean, the production definitely plays into it. Like, Venetian Snares has a ton of, you know, punchy, organic sounding samples that he pulls from, which are very mid and low heavy. So it's a more guttural, dense sort of feeling that you like feel in your gut rather than like in your ears and your head, which is like by definition a more cathartic thing. Here it's much more treble heavy, much more like higher end of the mids heavy. I mean, that beat in that particular track, again, there was like no bass to that. That was all mids and treble. So that's probably part of the reason. I think the other reason as well is that they're fundamentally different albums, because that Venetian Snares album is like an experience more than it is an album, in that like you go in to get pummeled and you go in to like physically just flail about. Whereas this is fundamentally a different album than that. This is like a more sort of headphone geared, close listen oriented, sit back and just groove along sort of album. It's a very heady, dense, almost like analytical, if that makes sense, album. So they're fundamentally different things. And by those standards then, I think that track worked again. There was still that pretty melody over the top that, once again, could have been done with just acoustic guitar and I wouldn't be complaining. But I think that did it fairly well as far as the beats go. I would have liked some more low-end stuff in there, of course, to round it out. But other than that, I thought that was fine. Not much acoustic stuff in that. That was pretty much purely electronic. And of course, there was all of that classic, you know, Sweet Trip glitchy stuff happening over the top, which, like, I can't really keep promoting it, which I think I've come to expect it from there by now. So that was a good track. It wasn't a mind-blowing track, not a particularly, like, wheel reinventing track or anything. It was pretty forgettable, though. Like, that wasn't one of the more memorable tracks, and that's one of the ones I think that will just disappear from my head not long after I've heard it. So maybe more re-listens rather will like reinforce that in my head a bit more. I don't know, we'll see. So that's the fourth last track done. Now we're back to the final 3 tracks on the album. Again, all on the sort of shorter side. This track 10, wow, it's been 10 tracks, is called Chocolate Matter. It is 4 minutes and 4 seconds long. Let's just go. I'm assuming it'll be the same sort of thing, but I'd love a difference, honestly. Whoa. Just to remind you that we are an electronic band, here we have a ringtone. Okay. Oh, not over. My laptop is melting down over here. Yeah, I mean, it was more, and ironically, it's just, I don't know what I want from this album, really. Well, I do know what I want, but the things that I think I want, which is essentially Dsco, were delivered to me on a silver platter on this track. But that was, like, not nearly as catchy or as fun or as groovy or as really entertaining as Dsco was. That was a bit more of a dirge. That was a bit slower, much more like in the the My Bloody Valentine realm, but not quite as engaging as a lot of the other tracks on that. I think very abrasive too. Like that's the only track I've been really tempted to like turn down. I think that's the most abrasive track so far, and there aren't even really any electronic elements to speak of until that sort of ringtone like ending. Yeah, those guitars like flayed you. In a different way to the way I'd say like Tool guitars flayed you. That was just like abrasive and just like punching your ears over and over. So that was quite pummeling. I didn't think the melody with it was anything special. I didn't think the chord movement was anything special. Nothing like too memorable or catchy in my opinion. I'd actually call that like probably one of my least favorite tracks so far. There's not a whole lot. I mean, I liked the idea that they sort of stripped away from the electronic stuff for a song and just went more conventional rock / shoegaze, but other than that, there wasn't a whole lot that I sort of could get particularly excited about on that. It wasn't particularly meditative. It wasn't particularly like hypnotic. It just sort of sounded like loud dirge-like and sort of unnecessary in my opinion. No, I wasn't huge on that track. Wasn't huge on that track. Again, this is all sort of subject to like change and revision on re-listen. It might change and be revised on re-listen. I'm not sure. I have no idea how this album will sort of sink into me on the long term. I know people love this, like love this thing. So maybe I'll discover what it is that they love about this album to that extent. On further listens, and particularly a track like that. But for now, wasn't big on it. So it's fine though. We have 2 more tracks to go. These 2 tracks are like almost identical lengths. So track 11 is called To All the Dances of the World, and then my app here cuts off the rest of the titles. So To All the Dances of the World something. 6 minutes 19 long. I mean, this album sort of falls into one of 2 molds so far. It's either like the electronic thing or like a sort of a pure shoegaze thing. So I'm guessing more of an electronic thing coming after Chocolate Matter, but who knows? You can sort of predict this album. Like, it is unpredictable in a way, but it only sort of oscillates between 2 genres rather than several. So let's go. Track 11. See what this is like. Oh, pretty. Oh, that's pretty. I like that. That's a bit unnerving, that voice. That's a cool way of establishing a beat. Oh. Melody isn't instantly catchy or anything, but it's not bad. I like that. The don't like the as much though. Whoa. Yeah, I like this. I wish they'd just stop glitching around though. like a really mellow track. Oh. Okay, that's weird. That's left field. Nice organ pads. That's a weird little interlude. Not sure it added much. Yeah, see, I like that marimba melody a lot. If only everything else is a bit sparser, just to let it breathe a bit. This album, it reminds me of... Has anyone in the comments, let me know if you have, played the Katamari Damacy games? If you have, you know what I'm talking about. This is very similar to the soundtrack on that. And I was trying to think of what, like, this music reminded me of, and I think it's that. It's the Katamari Damacy games. With that sort of... that quirky, peppy, sort of... very electronic focused style of like pop music, pretty much. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna do something unconventional, like for me in particular. I'm not gonna give any commentary on that track right now, but I'm gonna deliver it after the album's done, because I think at this point there's nothing particularly individual that I can say about that track that doesn't apply to the whole album. So I'm going to do something weird and decline to review that track, shocker, and sort of give that review as a summary of the whole album at the end, because I do have stuff to say about that, but I think it's just occurred to me like how representative that track is of the rest of the album in many ways. So I'm gonna get to that later, but we're gonna get into the last track now, which I think is probably gonna do something similar to what I've already heard on this album. So it'll screw my whole idea up if this is completely separate to what I've been hearing up to this point, track 12, which is Design :2:3. So sort of the title track again. But I doubt it somehow. So let's just do that, and then I'm gonna deliver my final reaction about this album. Let's go. Track 12. Is he gonna do something completely different? It probably is. Well, fuck me then. It's like old rock. Those second and third chords are fucked up. No, actually third and fourth, rather. Oh, nice bass. Okay, yeah, this is completely separate to like pretty much everything else. I'm sure I love how those chords are sequenced though. Whoa. Yeah, that started off pretty different, but that's actually just gone back to a shoegazy thing now. But that first minute or so was that's sort of like an alt rock song from the 90s or something. That was interesting. That's kind of interesting. I'll give it that. It's like the whole thing's just one mangled transmission from space. Maybe this is more like how you're meant to listen to it. It's like lying down. Very My Bloody Valentine. Alright, good night. Wake me up when it's time to upload this video. Okay, I'm awake. I've such like all over the place thoughts about that album. One thing, look, I will say about this album, it feels important. Like it feels like what I'm hearing on this album is something that has never really been done. At least this combination of stuff has never been done in music before. I feel like this is the only band I've ever heard that does this precise thing. So this feels like it feels like an important sort of landmark album. But here's the thing about that album. I almost wish it wasn't landmark, and here's what I mean by that. It sort of feels like it's pop music that is getting suffocated. Like, it feels like pop music that's buried underneath 50 million layers of, like, rubble after a huge accident or something, and it can't breathe. Like, it feels like, in essence, that's what it is. It feels like pop music that has no room to breathe, or move, or exist. If, like, some albums you'd call airy, like I'd call My Bloody Valentine's Loveless, for example. This super wide open, airy album that isn't, like, suffocating, except for a few tracks like To Hear Knows When is very suffocating. But other than that, it feels like this light, airy, breezy sort of album. And the reason I bring that album up in particular is because that is a clear influence on this. Like, the parallels, especially in the more shoegazy parts of this album, are so clear. But it's also to bring up how different those albums feel and how different those albums leave the listener after they're finished. After I listen to Loveless, I feel like energized and like happy and free. After this, as you can see, I'm like exhausted. That album like exhausted. It pummeled me. It exhausted me. And I honestly have no more energy left. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing because, I mean, I love Swans, for example, and I don't feel energized. I feel totally exhausted after their albums. But it's more in terms of just what, like, the songs we actually have here are at their most core level and whether the production fits that. So I'm just going to reiterate something I've said a million times in this. I feel like underneath all of the musical detritus, the huge walls of guitars, the like crazy skittering synth work and like treble heavy drum machines, the strange sort of bleeping and blooping and effects and pedals and blah blah blah, reverb, echo, everything they have all through this mix. Under all of that mess lies some, not like groundbreaking, obviously, but just really gorgeous pop songs. And I can imagine in a parallel universe, as I sort of hinted at earlier again, a universe in which these 3 or however many players there are here threw out their computers, bought acoustic guitars and like a small drum kit, and just recorded a beautiful, gorgeous, airy, light, almost sort of mystical sounding pop album, like acoustic pop album with these same songs for the most part. I mean, there are exceptions. But that's not the universe we live in. But I honestly think that would have been a better universe. And honestly, I want to hear these songs stripped back because with everything on top of it, it makes the songs in many cases feel slightly unpleasant to listen to. And there are many like brilliant songs hiding underneath all that stuff. I mean, Velocity, track 3, absolutely stunning vocal melody. The vocals, as I should say, are generally really strong on this album. I love how they interlock. I like the harmonies that the two vocalists share. I love the tone of their voice. I love everything about their voices. Like, that's not a problem at all. And that's strange because normally voices can be like a make or break thing for me on some albums. But weirdly enough, on this album, that isn't a problem at all. I love their voices and I love how they play off each other. But in my opinion, they just go too overboard with all of the electronic sounds and fizzes and like crazy burblings of a synth-obsessed band. And it sort of, in the process, distracts you from the actual beautiful beating heart of these songs. I really wanted to, like, I love the aesthetic promise of this album. I really want to love it. But just, it's stuff like that. It's the way it's produced. that is sort of holding me back from like loving it a little bit. That being said, though, the way that the electronics are actually done, the way they approach the direction they decided to go in, which in my opinion is the wrong direction, is about as good as it could be. Like those sort of synth sounds are so well produced. They sound so authentic. They sound like really creatively applied, in my opinion, and they just generally sound full-bodied and dense. And like I think that element of the album's lovely. I certainly think the skittery nature of it is done really well. As far as that sort of glitchy sound goes, it's one of the best examples in terms of just raw production and like mastering of that particular glitchy sound. I just don't think that glitchy sound suits these songs. That's pretty much my opinion on this at the end. Now, there's one track on this in particular that breaks the mold of pretty much every piece of criticism I've given so far, and you know exactly what song it is. Dsco, incredible song. I just loved the melody. I loved the arrangement. I loved how it was pretty much a 50-50 mix of those shoegazy elements and those electronic elements with like no stark contrasts between them. I love how the track is put together. Fantastic structure. Pretty much a perfect pop song, and a rare example of a song where they realised that what they had was a pop song, a brilliant one, and they decided to treat it as such without making too many like peppy or trite concessions to listener appeal. I thought that was just a brilliant track, and I'll be listening to that so much in the future. So if the whole album was at the quality of like a Dsco, I think it'd be a 10 out of 10, genuinely. So that was my number one, obviously, on the album. Number two is Design One, in my opinion. I loved how simple that was kept. It was like just a 3-minute track, just a beat, a really simple beat, some cool housey chords over the top, and that was pretty much it. No going overboard on the skittering electronics, no crazy everywhere and everything all at once production. Just really nice, light, and really appealing to me. So I liked that track a lot. Then for part three, I'm going to say International. And I say International because I think that was like a rare breather moment on that album. That was one of the few moments on the album where I feel like I had a chance to just sit back and catch my breath. It was very electronic for the most part, but it was kept really light and not particularly skittering at all. Just very light and tone heavy and like meditative and really gorgeous. I also liked how in the last 2 minutes or so it went into that nice sort of acoustic section. That was quite pretty. They didn't try and, be too abrasive on that at all. I thought maybe a whole album of that I would have even preferred more. But yeah, no, International was a great track and well worth the 10-minute runtime. Now, before you go into the comments and like abuse me because it sounds like I hate this album, I don't hate it. It's like a 6 out of 10 minimum for me. I think what it does is not ideal for me, but I think it does it about as well as it could do. I just unfortunately sit here sort of reeling and crying because I know that what's hiding underneath all that detritus, is an album that I would have given it a 10 out of 10. So that ultimately is the biggest and pretty much the only indictment of this album. Sweet Trip, Velocity, Design, Comfort, it's fine. That being said, though, this seems like an album that's ripe for re-listen. So I'll let you guys know maybe in a later video about how this album's holding up for me in terms of re-listens. But otherwise, I think we're done. Thank you so much for watching. If you got through this whole video, I will be amazed because this is probably going to be like 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours by the time I get it edited. So if you managed to sit through that whole thing, thank you so much. You're probably a fan of this album if you did, so I'm sorry for the critical stuff. It's just my raw opinion. Please like if you liked my criticisms. Please subscribe, do all that stuff. Follow me on Instagram. You can find me at SMAM Listens. And yeah, watch all of my other videos. I have more sort of exciting reactions, I'm sure, to some of those. Thank you so much for watching again. Really means a lot. Every view counts. And I will see you in the next video. Cheerio. Goodbye.